He's always kind of playing around. And anyway, so he hung up and said, yeah, he said, we need to go fix supper for Oprah. I was like, what? You know, Oprah-Winfrey? He's like, yeah.
Welcome to Gorillapreneur, the art of waging small business warfare podcast, teaching Davids how to defeat Goliaths. Now here's your host, Mark Anthony Peterson.
Welcome back to the podcast for entrepreneurs, startups, and business mavericks. If you're not a maverick, you don't have to go home, but you got to get up out of this podcast. In this podcast, we teach entrepreneurs how to defeat the corporate giant. Just like in the story of David and Goliath, David defeated a much taller and stronger Goliath, not by fighting the giant in hand-to-hand combat, but by using technology. A slingshot. The slingshot allowed the smaller David to attack from a distance that minimized the advantages that Goliath had over the smaller David. My name is Mark Anthony Peterson. I'm a serial entrepreneur, a futurist, and the managing executive at Serial Consulting, a leading small business strategy and technology consulting firm. I'm also the author of the book Gorillapreneur, Small Business Strategy for Davids Wanting to Defeat Goliaths, which is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. This podcast is brought to you by Serial Consulting. An idea can launch a business, a strategy can take it global. In today's show, we interview Rodney King, the owner of Marks-Mart, the specialty shop that Oprah Winfrey shops at when she's in Selma, Alabama. We talk small business, we talk strategy, we talk how to beat Walmart. I think you're going to really enjoy this interview. Okay, we are here with Mr. King of Marks-Mart in Selma, Alabama. First time on the Gorillapreneur podcast. Thank you, sir, for being on the podcast here today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Before we jump in and talk about your business, why don't we learn a little bit more about you, a little bit about your background, and then hopefully dovetail right into understanding what makes Marks-Mart what it is and what makes it compete against those giants, since Gorillapreneurs are all about Davids taking on Goliaths. Mm-hmm. And you're certainly doing that in the great city of Selma, Alabama, against some of the bigger retailers, surviving since 1978. But before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about you and what makes you passionate for the business.
I pretty much grew up here, and went to school. And my first job was actually with the local company Ziegler's, R.L. Ziegler's, and I was living in Atlanta looking for a job. I graduated right after the '80s recession. There was a whole lot of jobs. It was 80, probably. Let's see, what was it? Probably 83, 84. Right. But I was living in Atlanta. I was like, man, I got to find a job. There just wasn't a whole lot available, and but Ziegler's, I'd actually sent a resume into them. They were opening a territory in Florida, which they had never done before. And they hired me, and I worked in Pensacola for a while. And at that time, they were in the meat business, but the meat business hadn't gone into warehouse distribution. They were all still store-door delivery. And so this was their first foray into that. And so they were going to hire some college whippersnappers. But of course, there's a big learning curve there in the grocery business and distribution and all that, and there was for them too. But did that for a while, and then went on to another company, Likes Brothers, out of Tampa, which was a privately owned, family-owned company, or Likes Pasco, and they were involved in a lot of different things. But I stayed in the meat side of it and again, in warehouse distribution, warehouse sales. Basically, I always worked independent warehouses, would be more like a Piggly Wiggly or AG, some chain stuff, but my expertise was really with the independent operators. And I had pretty big territories, and probably in the late 80s, I was like, I just kind of noticing that people were getting more into the grilling and spending more on their backyards and their patios and porches, and just there was more of a just more social movement to just cook out more. And I was thinking, and I started thinking, and I was going to a lot of different stores, like independent stores, and they did all kinds of stuff. Some of them made their own sausage, and some of them had smokehouses, and just you never know what you would run across in Mississippi or in Florida. You just never do. Georgia. Anyway, and I just kind of started thinking it would be nice if you had a concept where people could put their whole meal on the grill because they enjoy it, and they're out of the kitchen and they're enjoying their yard or whatever, their home or their friends, whatever. It's just a little more relaxing atmosphere. And so I decided to do that. And my father at the time had a small store here in Selma, which is Marks-Mart. But it was just a standard kind of little country convenience store. We weren't doing a whole lot of business, and I think he was pretty much ready. It was his foray into his own business after retiring, which he enjoyed. And but we, I said, well, it'll be a risk. I'm gonna stop working. I had one child at the time, and I was married. And I was like, wow, this is probably not a very good idea, but I did it anyway, and it became pretty successful. I mean, I could tell it was working. Like people were like, oh, this is neat, and they were kind of getting the concept. And so.
Now, what year was that you made that transition?
That would have been in about 93, somewhere there.
Okay.
So, but it was all shoestring stuff. I mean, I was really too young to have the capital to, and actually, I remember my dad, he said, well, I don't really have enough to pay you. so I was like, well, okay.
He said, I can keep you busy, but I can't pay you.
I said, so I just floated myself for a while, and I was like, well, it's a lot harder, and it's a lot better actually if you got to make your income.
Right.
It's right. Not if you've got to make it, then you better figure out real quick how to do that. And so got started and developed some stuff with my ex-wife, ex-wife, but came up with some ideas, and we still have a lot of those. Those are the mainstay of the business today, are those products.
Right.
And along, it was just you could walk in the store, you could pick your meal up, and you could get your appetizers, your entree, and you put everything on the grill,
right, and
be done in 30 minutes, and you have a restaurant quality meal, and you have paid restaurant prices.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to back up and unpack the statement you made earlier about paying yourself, figuring out a way to pay yourself, because a lot of entrepreneurs that we talk to, we try to stress, you may have to do something on the side while you get your business off the ground. Take us through what you did. What opportunities did you pursue to keep money in your pocket while you were building this brand?
Well, I mean, I did everything I made or had went into doing that. I didn't do anything outside because it was too much work to do something else. Because I remember people in the beginning, I used to ask, is this all you do?
So that's enough, right?
So yeah, if you just spent 80 hours, just like I did, you would be asking that. But people don't understand. The best thing I saw one time was a cartoon in the newspaper. I don't know which newspaper it was, but had a guy who's like, man, I'm going to work 40 hours a week and save all my money so I can open my business and work 90 hours a week. That's spot on. It is. That's true.
That's right.
But I just put everything back in, and I think I eventually put some of my 401k in, and then just had to build a cash flow enough to buy the food and stuff that we were doing. We did a lot of, we just changed basically kind of his concept of his store, and then brought the food in, and then had to make. Also at the same time, I had to kind of justify him. So I gotta buy $3,000 worth of beef tenders and convince him, I could sell them. But,
Right.
you just have to it's just all built in, and you just have to gradually build it. That's what we did.
So you were on the cutting edge in '93 of this concept because,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Everywhere else, these types of burgeoning specialty stores were just starting to get off the ground.
Right. I think you might have had, there was one in Birmingham. I can't remember the name of it now. It doesn't exist anymore. And there was one in Montgomery, but it was more like an old, like Italian deli. And so really what we were doing, nobody was doing.
Right. So what gave you confidence that you had done the right type of customer discovery, that this concept would work? I mean, you saw the grilling. You thought that kind of a prepackaged gourmet meal would be the right way to go. Mm-hmm. What gave you the confidence that you'd gotten the right amount of customer data?
Just I've always been big on customer feedback and listening, and that came out of being in the grocery business. So when you're classically trained in the grocery business, it's all about presentation and product and price and position, and it probably gave me that kind of thought process about what I was doing. Like I knew not to just jumble everything up. I had to have a presentation or something. So I learned that from my other job. You learn something every day from everything you're doing. Mm-hmm. But that exposure I had to those big stores and stuff like that, it was and whatever they were all doing as a whole store was good for me. Because I was always looking for what they were doing different, what they were doing right, what they were doing wrong. But the feedback was almost instantaneously was real positive. I was like, well, and I kept hearing that. I was like, wow, that's really good. Now, the next hurdle was how do I make all this stuff, because it was all handmade and you have to touch everything, and
right.
It was expensive, and you have to. There's a lot of work involved, and to say, well, I don't, what is this? I mean, what's in this, and what explain it to a customer and how you cook it. And we still do that today, but it was a lot more then.
So how did you unpack that? Because again, you're opening the box for the first time for a lot of customers who had not had this experience, and they're coming into your store seeing higher end food than they can get anywhere else within a 50-mile driving radius.
I think just you keep it simple. People say that, but the thought that I can put my meal on the grill, and that kind of, and I still use that today. It's like we have a new location in Northport, Tuscaloosa, and you have to explain the concept to people. And as they get it, we get busier and busier because
right.
I can go by there and I can cook tonight. It's a restaurant culture, but I can go cook in 30 minutes, have a great meal, and it's nice, half the price, and really a lot better for us. And
right.
they're starting to get it. You see that, but I think that just in my mind, I'm like, well, what? I can't do a whole lot of stuff because you only have so much room on a grill, but I can combine this with this, and there's a meal. I can combine this with this, and there's a meal, and just stay with that. And because for a long time, I probably had, probably started with 4 products and then ended up 6, because every product I made, I wanted to make sure it was going to work. If it didn't, or if it was too hard to make, I just quit doing it because it was too much time or just wasn't going to sell properly. And some things wouldn't sell properly, but I knew if I stayed with it, it would. So it's just kind of a balance. You just have to take a risk all the time, every day. I probably don't need to buy that, but if I buy this, people will see that and they'll assume something else. Well, if he's got Dom Perignon, well, the steak's probably pretty good.
Right.
So it's just, you have to kind of, and a lot of people will not do that. They won't. It's like, you're going to have some dead inventory. I know we're all about efficiency and all that, and we are, but you have to kind of have
complementary inventory.
Yeah, you have to put some stuff in the mix.
Right.
And you may not ever sell it, but it's in the mix.
Right. Because it has to be there to create the brand.
And then when you have a really good day, you reward your employees with it.
Right. Before we move on to that concept, tell us about the meals. Give the audience a sense of what a customer is walking in there buying and walking out with when they get a complete meal, so they can truly understand.
Probably the most famous thing we invented is the chicken swirl, and of course we trademarked it and all that. But it's basically a chicken breast. It's got seasoning in it. It's been restructured So you can put it on the grill. It's a whole chicken breast. It's wrapped in bacon. It's got smoked beef in it. It's got some salt and pepper and some other seasonings in it. And you can cook it, 25 minutes on the grill, or you can bake it in the oven. And kids like it, old people like it, and it's a pretty big serving. And with that, we have twice baked potatoes, which nobody was doing then. So they were already done, so all you had to do was warm them up, bake them in the oven with it if you wanted to, or put it on the grill, bread rack. And then we did stuffed mushrooms, which was a family recipe from my wife's mother, and then we did stuffed peppers, some breads, just pretty much anything you think about building a meal, a basic meal we had there.
And so, out of those, what are your best sellers? Is it still the chicken swirl, or?
Well, yeah, probably. It just depends on the time of year, but yeah, chicken swirls definitely volume wise are always the biggest hit probably, and then the beef or fillets. We've sold fillets since the beginning too, and there's sell just as many as them, and that's, like I said, that's one of those products where it's a big investment. You buy a box of tenders, it could be $600, so you better know how
to move them.
Well, you better know how to process them too, because
right.
that's another thing. A lot of people go, and now I've been copied several times. We probably have more businesses like mine around this area in Alabama than anywhere in the U.S.
Because you've made it successful.
Well, it was because they come in. We always have copycats, but and now that it's popular again, people are like, let me. Why don't you tell me how to do this, or tell me who you buy from? It's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Right. So they can go back and say,
but I tell you this: if you want to go learn how to do this, why don't you go get your job at Fresh Market or something like that? That's what I would do today if I was going to go get in this business.
Starting today,
I would go
right?
See what they know, but that never happens,
right?
Because they all go, well, I know a butcher, or I know. I was like, no,
not the same thing. Not the same thing. So let's now drill down on that the concept that fascinated me, because when I walked into your store, I had the same reaction. I saw the great meats, but then I looked over and saw the terrific selection of wines, and I was like, wow. It made me take a step back. I drive over from Atlanta. I'm looking around in the store, and I go, wait a minute, did I just cross the line back in Georgia? So, was it again your training from the grocery store business that said, I got to have these complementary items that go with this food that may not sell as fast, but they have to be here? What keyed you in that needed to be a part of the experience?
Well, that was probably just personal. I liked. They didn't really have craft beer then. They had imported beer, and in small towns, nobody carried it. It's like, we got Budweiser and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, there's good German beers, and I was just, again, took a risk, like, well, we could probably sell some of this stuff, especially if I'm going to sell it, because you're there all day. You might as well be a salesman too and sell and then I picked up probably the imported beer first, and then the wine, and probably started out with, I don't know, I probably had 4 different types of wine, and that was about it.
Right.
But that's probably about all this market would.
Right.
Then, and it just keeps growing, and it just kept growing and kept growing. You'd finally get the people that were going to Birmingham or Montgomery or, to buy wine. Well, can you get this? Yeah. I still have today. I'll have people come, I didn't know you carried this. Yeah, I've carried it for 30 years.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like you also have some of the most unique looking like preserves and other, kind of like vintage home items. Are those made locally, or are you sourcing those? Yeah,
they're not made locally. Well, some of them are, and then some of them, there was an older man in Florida.
Okay.
Coach Sexton, who works there, has been there for a long time. His friend, when he retired, decided to get in the canning business, and so that's what we've been buying from him for probably 15 years.
Wow!
And then we have the Troyer stuff, which is the Amish wedding stuff, and the Jurgen, Angie Jurgen here has a line too. So that's. It's amazing right now how popular pickled stuff is.
Right, because I walk in, I'm going, I was not expecting that. Yeah. But then as I absorbed the brand, it all made sense. That if I mentioned a place right outside of Atlanta called Serenbe. and they had all of these little pickled items as part of the tea time. That's kind of midday tea there at the farm. And when I walked into your shop, it brought all those memories back because they have a kind of a farm lodging experience, kind of cozy cabin. And I walked through your store and I'm going, cozy cabin, Ceremony, I'm right back here. Yeah. And I thought a consultant had come in and just picked all these items out because it worked. You mentioned when you started the business, you saw the grills. You picked up on those trends. What trends are you picking up on now? What's changing about how people dine that may impact how your business works?
It's still, I think there's still a lot of the same, but if you change markets and go to Tuscaloosa, which is a bigger city, it's totally different. And I talked to you met Jacob last night. He came down, he had to pick some stuff up, and he was saying, he's like, it's just so different, with the younger, some of those people are really into their health and ingredient. They've got the apps and they'll scan something and see if they, what's in it. And, of course, and I was talking to him, I was like, well, Jacob was like, some of that's really misleading. And he said, yeah, but you can't tell them that.
Right. That's true.
Yeah, you're right. I said, but, like I want a all natural, hormone free, so he was talking about chicken. He's like, people expect me to carry this stuff, and I have to buy a case of it. I said, I can't buy it. I don't sell it. But, these customers expect that. And it's like, well, you just have to tell them. You can't do it unless you want to buy a case.
Right.
But a lot of that, it's like a foodie mentality, which is fine. Right. As a grocer, it's not so fine.
Right.
Because it's like you have to be very patient. It's like, well, I know, but. Yeah, well, and now I've just gotten to where I do say, like, hey, I can buy it for you, but, this is how it comes. I mean, you can buy anything. Anything is possible. I always tell people that's true.
Right.
I mean, through our suppliers, you can get pretty much anything in the world you want, really. You just may have to wait for it. Do you really want that? Because it's a difference in price point.
Oh, yeah. I know. I may be one of these foodies that you're picking on, but... I shop at Sprouts in Atlanta.
Yeah, Sprouts.
And that's one of the items that my doctor has told me to now focus on is the hormone-free, chickens and beef. Mm-hmm. And when I made the switch, I got to tell you, it was a hit to the wallet and a hit to the quantity of food that I was able to purchase. And so, yeah, you're right. It is a certain customer responsibility when they ask for that, when they try to push that onto the restaurant or to the business.
I've just seen it from both sides, like the manufacturer and the consumer side and the grocer. And you just have to, I think we don't really know a lot about the entire food chain, how it works. And we always hear the negative stuff and about the news, but this is horrible. They do this with milk and cows and chickens. Because I came up a different route, I'm like, I'm really impressed with the safety we have in our food supply.
Right.
And I know why they have to do some of those things. It's because we don't want people to get sick.
Right.
And, when we're feeding a lot of people in America, we're feeding a lot of the world, really. And nowhere on earth is food safe like ours is. I mean, I know we have some stuff, but that's usually, it didn't happen here, it happened in another country and I don't think our people are really taught enough about that side. Like, really, a lot of people don't know how stuff gets to the grocery store.
No.
Like I've been asked before, when you get your Nabisco truck in or your Alpo truck in. I was like,
not the way it comes in.
But I mean, there's a lot of people think that, that you get a truck for every item in your store.
Right,
you check 700 trucks.
If you did that, nobody could make any money.
But being on the manufacturer side, for especially bigger companies, what they go through to keep things clean, and they all have laboratories and they test it's a big business. I mean, they have a lot at stake, and they don't play around. I mean, people are kind of, well, it's not, and then you get you flip it over to the local stuff. Well, all that stuff's out the window.
Right.
People want you want to eat some free range eggs. No, not me, because I know what's in that chicken yard. And I'd rather have the ones that have been washed. and inspect it, with
right,
an X-ray.
Right. Exactly. Over that other, there might be a snake comes out of that egg.
But all those little terms now, like I said, well, that come full circle back because they're really into those terms and stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of those terms, the FDA is not very stringent on.
Right,
free-range chicken, if you put a piece of baling wire outside of the door chicken house and they can walk out 3 feet, it's free-range.
Free-range, that's right.
But they're not going to do it anyway because they're too big to walk out there.
Right, exactly.
But it's just, but you, like you said, you have to be patient. And so it's just a new thing. But then you have healthy eating, but at the same time, those people, it's kind of a different. It's kind of like a dichotomy because they have healthy eaters, but they still want fatty foods,
right?
Like
fatty
rich
foods.
Obviously they're healthy, but they still want cheesecake and ribs, and it's like so. I don't really get that, but it's good for us.
It's like the people who insist on the Diet Coke with the meal of 2,000 calories.
Diet Coke and candy bar.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, I get it. You don't have too much sugar.
That's right. So you've been around since the days of Kmart back in the 70s and now Walmart. And Walmart's doing, new stuff today where you can shop online and pick up at the counter. They're trying to do more things with grocery delivery. Have any of those kinds of things done anything to make you rethink parts of your business?
We're kind of planning to grow more, and I think we're at a stage where that change is going to come for us pretty soon. But right now, I don't think it's scalable. Like, I think what you would pay for your pickup deliveries and all that kind of stuff, like if you wanted, all the people or companies that deliver food for you,
right?
It's just not. It's not viable. I mean, you have to be careful. You got to make money,
right?
You got to pay bills, especially in small business. And, you can step out there and get clipped pretty good and may not recover.
Right, right.
But I think I feel like in our business, people still like you said, you want to come in, you have that feeling, and that's happened with our younger customers too. They like that,
right.
It's While I think the online ordering and the pickup and I think that's great, but I think there's still a market for just hey. If you went in our store, you probably saw Coach Sexton or somebody behind the counter.
Right, I did.
It's like, they just want that.
Right.
See the guy or the lady or your buddy or, have that kind of feeling of just a small.
Do you think that's what some of the retailers who haven't been as successful against the Walmart have missed? Is that opportunity to create that unique experience with their brand so that the customer clearly sees what's different from a Walmart experience versus a marks-mart experience? We got a lot of mom and pop restaurateurs and market owners that listen to the podcast, and I know in many of their minds they're always thinking, when is Walmart going to deal the death blow? In your experience, is it you got to be figuring out ways to make that experience meaningful for those customers that you have?
Yeah, and as far as Walmart, I remember was Sam's book. What was it? I can't remember. Was it Sam something? Sam Wall.
Sam Wall,
book, right? Uh-huh. And in his book, he said, and it was a great book, by the way.
Yeah, I've read that book.
And but he said, he said, I can't. He said, what? He addressed that. I'm shutting small businesses down. Yeah, but he told you what you. He said, I don't know everybody's name. You do. You know your customers. I mean, that's really he was right. I mean, you're going to go to Walmart for Walmart things, and you're going to go to your local store for, and a lot of times, your prices aren't that much different,
Right.
Or maybe a small business has been guilty of charging too much when they could have charged a fair price and still made money, but they didn't. And that I think that's probably got more small businesses. And I've never been scared of Walmart, and they don't do what I do, and even if they did, they couldn't do it as well. I know that.
Right.
And Sam was right. You holler at somebody from across the street, and they can't do that.
Right. Exactly.
And why worry about it? My tomatoes are just as cheap as Walmart's, but it's just competition is competition. But I think you should just, if you're a small business, you should do what you're good at and do the best you can and be excellent at that, because people get it. If you've been open for a while, they're there for a reason. There's something they like,
Right.
and just do the best you can with that. And
Well, you've got something that I know just about every Walmart, maybe every Walmart hadn't have, and that's Oprah Winfrey as a customer.
yeah.
So tell us about that experience. A billionaire comes to Selma, Alabama, and shows up in your shop.
They were having a big cast party, and she kind of came in late, and nobody could get together a catering situation to feed them all, and it's probably, I don't know, 75 people. And we've always been good at production. Now, we're not to cook it for you.
Right. You get it prepped and ready to go.
But, we can get stuff together. And so somebody suggested us, and she called my manager then. It was Andrew Slagle. And I heard him talking. He's like, I'm on the phone with Oprah. I was like, no, you're not. He's always kind of playing around. And anyway, so he hung up and said, yeah. He said, we need to go fix supper for Oprah. I was like, what? Oprah Winfrey? He's like, yeah. I was like, I just
You're like, no, not Oprah.
And then he said, but we need to get it out there. Let's see, it's like 6 o'clock, 6:30. And he said, and we need to cook it. And I was like, we can't, we're not, no. Anyway, so she had asked him to do that. He was having a conversation with somebody that knew us, and then with her, and anyway, so he agreed to do it. So we got to kind of working on it and got everything together. Of course, they wanted wine and beer, and I think we did fillets and chicken swirls. And what we ended up doing, because of time crunch, was we had this thing. Andrew and I and my oldest son, we used to coach football together, and we would get together and just as a stress release after a game or something, we have something called a meat pile. So we would just grill a bunch of stuff, chop it all up, put it on some butcher paper, and just, So right. I was like, I think the only thing we can do, Andrew, is do a meat pile for him. He said, yeah, that'd be perfect. So Oprah and her cast had a Marks-Mart meat pile.
A big pile.
We did, they did, and then some ladies in the community, the Toutons, and gosh, I can't remember them all, but anyway, they all came together and helped us, and they did we got the salad stuff together. They baked mushrooms, got potatoes, and we did, and then I think somebody had some kind of grill. I can't remember now, but we started cooking, but it kind of came down to the wire, and then she showed up, and it was ready.
Wow.
So it was kind of neat because all these actors you've seen before.
Right. Now suddenly they're there right in front of you.
Like a couple of guys from HBO. What was the one about New Orleans, 8th Ward?
I think that's what. Yeah, I can't remember the name, but another one you're talking about.
Yeah, a couple of those guys. It was just different. And so while we were there, she knew we had to really work hard to get it together. She knew that, and came. So I'll stop by the store tomorrow. And I said, you don't have to do that. I said, I know you're busy. She said, no, I will. And she did. So she came by and shopped with us and got some photos made. It was kind of fun.
Now,
nice person.
The reason I like that story is that it feeds right into what you were just saying earlier. You know your customers more than Sam Walton does. You know their names. You know their needs. You know the people in the community. Who else could have pulled that together in the way that you did? Certainly not a chain store.
Well, no, probably not. But, and then, like I said, it was kind of just a whole process of getting it together and then going and getting it cooked, getting through her security. It's funny, she came in and she said, well, I need you to go ahead and give me your bill. And I was like, I
hadn't even thought about it. I was like,
no,
your food here.
I just said, no, go ahead. And I said, okay. So while I had to sit down and figure it out, she stayed in the store and she was talking to everybody. But she was really a gracious and down-to-earth person. So I was impressed.
Excellent.
Was.
That's what impressed me when I heard the story about her shopping with you. That's the first thing that came to my mind is that's how small businesses survive, and that's how small towns survive, is that you have to, one, have the specialty to be able to provide that level of service, because Oprah has eaten and gone places all over the world. And I'm not saying her standards are so far through the roof that nobody can't reach them, but she has a certain standard. And she saw that you could meet that standard and then ask for service that is probably outside of your scope, but presumed that you could fulfill that order. And you did. If small towns and small businesses operated in the way you did to fulfill that order, you stay in business, because she wasn't going to not pay the bill and was not going to keep you from making a profit off of that invoice. It was that event that needed to have that service, and she called the person that could execute it. And so that was, when I saw that, I had a feeling of pride for me as a Selma native, that she got that level of experience in this town and could walk out and go, if I'm back in Selma, I know where I'm going to go. Because there are too many times when people show up in small towns and they go, I'm not coming back because I didn't get that level of experience.
Yeah, I think she had a really good experience. I know the people that she stayed their house. I mean, she was gracious with them also. You know, she has houses all over the world. She told them, you know, anywhere you want to go, just let me know. And you know, you got a week. Like,
wow,
that'd be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice, right? Absolutely.
But the funniest, it was kind of funny because all the guys that were in Selma, with the exception of the what's the young guy that played Martin Luther King?
Oh, the English guy, yeah, David something,
yeah,
right?
But they were all on the porch and they were all talking about grilling. We were out there grilling, you know. Yeah, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
And, but it was funny. They started cracking on Brad Pitt because he wouldn't come to Selma because he was scared.
Really? What was he scared of?
I don't know. It's like, you know.
Brad Pitt may have gotten some bad information about the experience here, but others probably could have educated him. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg walked right down the street.
Well, but I mean, he's got to be thinking like most of your cast of your movies African American have been here for 2 or 3 months, or whatever. Right. It's like I don't.
If anything was going to happen, it would have happened in those 2 to 3 months, right?
So anyway, but it was kind of funny just them cracking. They were talking bad about it.
Well, hopefully he'll listen to this podcast and know that he can come down, make a stop at Marks-Mart, and then get some of the food that he missed, and tour the rest of Selma. So now that you've really solidified yourself here in Selma, you're saying you're moving into new markets, new opportunities, and you think that the trends that you see there, even though they're changing in some of the larger markets, organic and delivery, that your model is one that's set to continue to survive here in this area. But you and I had a conversation a few nights back where you're saying it's a hard business. Mm-hmm. That it looked like your dad had more fun than when you go home at night.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because entrepreneurs have to know that it's not all roses. It's not every day Oprah shows up. Give me a little sense of what you were expressing that night.
Well, I think, again, you go back to the Sam book, and he talked about commitment. And that's really the simple gist of it is you got to be committed. And if you're going to have days like you don't want to do it, you know. I remember first starting when my holidays, probably about the second year, third year, holidays started getting really busy. I didn't have enough people because I really couldn't afford more staff yet, or I didn't think I could, unless I made money to pay them.
Right.
But I stayed at that store for 3 days straight without going home because I had, food. You have to touch everything, you have to make everything, and I know that people who have restaurants know what I'm talking about, and that's why I would never want a restaurant because I think it's even more work.
Oh yes,
but because those guys, you really think about those guys that made it, sleeping on the floor, and I mean living and breathing, and that's pretty much what it is. I think you're gonna make success out of it, or having people that can really do that, then you have to be able to afford that, and it's just you have to be really committed to every day. Well, I have a friend that had a business, and he told me one time, you used to know the word. He said, Rodney, having a business is like you have poop in your brain all the time.
Oh no.
And I was like, he was just the stuff. You just think your stuff assaults you all the time. And he was right. It's like I think about that all the time when I hear it. I was like, oh shoot, poop in my brain. But I mean, you can be. You just never know what's going to happen.
Right.
There's a lot of variables in a small business. You can, and you need to be prepared, but some things just happen. You just have to work through it and be committed to get it done and do your best. And it's just, you have to have that stick-to-itiveness, because if you don't, you won't make it.
Tell us about your worst day. What was it like? How did you feel? And how did you get through it?
Well, probably when the kids were little, because you just have, especially like holidays. I mean, you have to work to make money, keep your business open, and you don't really get to spend time with your kids, and that's probably the biggest sacrifice for me. You can't do both.
Right.
And that's another thing too. If you have small children and you're going to go in business, you need to think about that. It's going to have an impact on your family, no doubt.
Right. Absolutely. Well, as we start to wrap up the podcast, what I'd like if you could tell us one or two more nuggets or gems for those entrepreneurs who are looking to get a business off the ground. If it's from how you funded on the front end, because it sounds like you had a good plan. You had some 401k money. That's still risky, but you had some seed capital. You had certainly a lot of experience that helped you before you launched the business by being a part of a corporate family that had more structured training to help you spot opportunities. And then you had a father who already had a business and a business culture up and running before you transitioned. So what advice, if you were speaking to yourself starting today, what advice would you give yourself?
I think about this a lot. I probably would have started earlier. So you need to start earlier.
Really?
Because if you think you can do it, and I'm not one of these grab the stars kind of person, I hear that stuff, but if you think you do have to have that stick-to-itiveness in your DNA, you have to have it. And if you don't venture into this. I mean, it's not rocket science, but you're going to have times you're not making money and there are problems, and you have to stay focused on what you're doing and your vision and what you think you can do and what it can provide for you and your family. But I think you should believe in yourself, and and really, if you have a product or a concept, it needs to be tested. Like I didn't test it with a lot of money, I took it very slow. Because a lot of people will build out a big place, and I need this and this and this, and well, how do you know what you need yet? Because people will, in the food business, they'll go crawl into a cave and eat if they've heard it's good. Mm-hmm. You
are absolutely right about that.
What's the place in the Greenville, Mississippi? The Doe's steak place. Have you ever been there?
I have not, but I've heard of it.
Oh God, it'll scare you to death.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a dump.
There's
Sorry, Doe's. Years ago, it's probably early '80s, and I've heard about it. Mm-hmm. Supposedly Elvis would fly from wherever and eat there, and so that's supposed to be really good, And man, we drove at this house. It was barely standing, and you walk in the front door. There's no door on the front.
Am I in the right
spot? There's a giant steak roller. The guy with a wife beater on it. Hey, y'all, come on in. Then you walk through the kitchen. It was just like old hot point stoves, and then you walk. The dining room's behind that. It was just chairs with 3 legs and tables with 3 legs. The windows are busted out, cardboard on them. Wow. And I was like, What are you selling here? Right? And but it was it was just famous, and it was good. People didn't care, they didn't care because the food was really good. But that's what we're saying is like if you can, if you think it's good and it is good, and just because somebody says you make good chicken salad, you shouldn't now open a chicken salad restaurant. Just there's a lot of
test it first, right? Take it small,
so you can sell it,
right?
Maybe they don't want to buy it,
right? People will take it because it's free. But when you start putting a price on it, will they buy it? And I've said that to so many people. There's nothing wrong with a soft launch, baby steps. Right. Figure out if you have a working model before you put all your money into it. And
because you're going to start figuring things out of efficiencies and product. And there's a whole world of stuff, no matter what business, like how to buy stuff, who you buy it from, distributors, what price point. There's all kinds of people that are too high on stuff, people that let's say you cheap product that's not good. You can't just walk out there blind like, I'm going to start up. Well, you get all kind of people at your door, and you don't want them all.
Right.
So you need to really, you really need somebody with experience to talk to or to guide you through and they need to make, and you need to make sure that they were successful.
Right.
One of the best things I heard was at a food show a long time ago. This was I was working for a company at a food show, but the guy next to me, we started talking. This was an older gentleman. He's probably about 80, and he was working for a broker. And he started talking about the restaurants he had owned in New York City. And he started naming them. I was like, man, I've heard of that. He's like, yeah. He said, man. He said I was so busy. You know, and he started talking about he loved the restaurant. He loved to cook. You know, he said I always loved to cook, and he was always, you know, he'd open these restaurants up, and they'd just be packed every night. He said, but you know what? He said, I never made any money. I said, what? He's like, yeah. He said, I never made any money because I never would stop and figure out what each dish cost me. Because I loved to do I only wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to do the rest of it. And because I didn't, I lost every one of them I had.
Yeah.
And he was, you know, he had some really big day restaurants, but you know,
it's those little things. It's those little. I did some work for a California restaurant that was extremely popular close to USC's campus. Husband and wife team. They were constantly packed. And the first thing I asked them, how much are you making off of each dish? And they didn't have a sense of profitability or pricing for those dishes relative to competitors who served the same thing. And that's the first thing we found, is that their most popular dish was way underpriced for the next restaurant that was serving the same thing. So it was the reason why they were packed.
And they were probably running and busy, and you know, that's kind of where we're at now. It's like you're going to have to restructure, reorganize, and make this is what you do and this is what I do.
Right.
I don't do what you do. But
right.
In a small business, that's another thing too, is you have to be careful about doing everything.
Right.
And because people will let you do everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we just talked about that in the last episode with Robert Armstrong, and that's the problem he said he had. When you're running and doing everything, you have no time to do the right stuff, to analyze and make the good decisions, because you're doing everything. And people will let you do that. And that's
when they'll call you to do it. You want me to change this light bulb?
Right.
Like, well, I'll just stay in the dark. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But you know,
get my flashlight out and keep working.
Yeah.
Tell our audience where they can find you physically and on the web, because all of our folks are going to come to Selma one day and they're going to want that Oprah Winfrey experience. So how can they find you here in town? How can they find you in Northport? How can they find you on the web?
So the website is www.chickenswirl.com, and then marks-mart Facebook, marks-mart Instagram, and Northport, we are by the Roll Tide Bridge in downtown Northport, which is across the river in Tuscaloosa. It's all together. And then Selma, we are on County Road 44, 1022, which is just right outside of Selma. So it's easy to find. Both of them are red stores, so they're.
Well, thank you, sir, for being on the podcast. This has been a wonderful discussion. Have learned a lot about your business and about you, and more importantly, I think our audience has learned a lot about how to think about their brand, how to develop that brand, how to stay close to the customer, and not to run into running. Take your time,
right.
Build that brand, and prove the model out before you put a whole lot of money behind it.
Yeah. And I think I think good thoughts form in your mind over time. You know, it's just you know how you feel sometimes you don't know the solution to something, and then it's like 3 months later you go, I think, you know, and you do it, it works. I think, you know, I guess that's just a God thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just he's showing you a path, but you have to be patient, and that's another thing with small business. You have to be patient. You know?
Right.
Like I said, you can't run around just running. You gotta be patient and you know.
Yeah, I think
pay the bills.
I think you're absolutely right. There's a cool line from The Matrix where Neo is talking to the Oracle, and he's saying, "I can't see the future." She said, "You can. You just got to wait till your mind can accept it."
Right.
And I think you're absolutely right. There are truths about your small business that you know. You just got to give your mind time to accept it. And I've talked to a lot of businesses that know their products they need to get rid of, their new ones they need to introduce. They just don't want to let go of it. It takes time for their brain to kind of want to accept it and finally see it. Hopefully they see it before they go out of business. And that's what I like what you have done. Thank you again for being on the podcast, sir.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely appreciate it. Gorillapreneurs, thank you for tuning in to this episode. I greatly appreciate you being in the audience.
If you like Gorillapreneur, you may like some of my other podcasts, Career Coaching X's and O's. This podcast is for those busy executives who right now may not want to be an entrepreneur, but do want to make a charge at the corner office. That's the perfect podcast for you. And then there's gigging, everything, and the sharing economy. If you want to keep up on news and views and trends in the gig economy, that podcast is for you. I'll put links to both shows in the show notes. I also want to thank the Selma Dallas County Public Library in Selma, Alabama, for letting us use the conference room to record this episode. Ms. Nichols, you have a terrific staff and a wonderful facility. Thank you again for hosting us in terrific, historic Selma, Alabama. And Gorillapreneurs, remember to check us out on Patreon. Patreon.com/Gorillapreneur. Become a Patreon and be the first to get one of our new Gorillapreneur hats or t-shirts. Gorillapreneurs, Scott Sullivan said it best in episode 7. Be a mace, sharpen those spikes, and if you're not breaking something, your company might be the next thing that gets broken.
Thank you for listening to the Gorillapreneur, the Art of Waging Small Business Warfare podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, you may also enjoy the book Gorillapreneur, Small Business Strategy for Davids Wanting to Defeat Goliaths, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. Follow Mark Peterson on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Gorillapreneur. Now I want to close with a quote from the great Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first, then seek to win. Keep fighting, Gorillapreneurs.